Good morning. I will explain in this video the three positions of the self model or the three selves model. This model can be used I use it for OCD clients, but also can be used for an aid method for any person who is busy with self-growth. Okay, self-development, spirituality, self-growth, let us say. Why? It is a very simple model. As far as I'm concerned, it is the simplest model that I know, which is assumes that you have three positions: the position in the current state, in the now, the self in the now, and the higher self, or I call it the real self, and the OCD self, or the bad self. Okay, the fake self, let us say. If you want to use it not as an OCD client, but as a self growth method to check if you are in the good direction. This model, which assumes three selves, the real self, the RS, I call it the RS shortly, or the S, the self. It is the less letters because it is the most used self, the most uh, the most used self, the current self. Okay, the self in the moment. Now it is the self that you are reading, working. The self that it is you are seeking therapy with it. The self. It is this. It is your common self. Okay, the first self. Okay, the self in the now. The current self. But I will give many examples, so everything uh, will be simpler for you and obvious for you, and it will be you will grasp it. Okay. So you have the real self, and you have the self, and you have the fake self or OCD self. In our context now in the therapy is OCD therapy. Okay. It is three selves. Why? Because it has two direction. So now this is the self. It either goes up to the real self or it goes down to the fake self, to the OCD self. And you can check very simply to know where I am now. So it is also a visualization and a shortcut for you to quickly check where I am standing now. Am I going up or going down? Okay. When this OCD thought came, OCD feeling came, I have done something internally, thought struggle, or externally, washing my hand or bringing something, checking something, going back with the car. Okay, what I have done now, my behavior now brings me up. This is the important question: brings me up or brings me down? Get me closer to my real self or get me closer to my fake self, to my OCD self? So it is a simple check. I will uh, use this model, or I'm using this model in the therapy, so that to make things simpler for you and more visualizing. Okay, because up means near the real self, down means further, more far from the real self, more distance from the real self. So it is not good. Okay, this is why we use this visualization method, because you can also uh, deduce and uh, and focus more. It give you more focus and give you more visualization about the process. So it should be always simple to answer these questions. Am I heading up or am I heading down? Okay. Okay, so the self, in the current moment, this is the S, the self, S. is the self that's used for study, to eat, to sport, uh, listening, but it is in the now. And why it is in the now? So now it is in the now. I don't mean it is the conscious self. No, the S, the self, it could be conscious and unconscious. It will be unconscious, less conscious when it takes the position, when it goes down. The more it goes down, the less conscious it is. Okay, and it will be completely fused with the OCD obsession when it is going to the position of the fake self. It will be more conscious the more it goes up. Okay, so the dynamic self, the current moment self, this is the self now. What are you doing now? This is yourself. So now you are in a higher meditative state or in a higher consciousness. Then the self is inhibiting the position, or living in the position of the higher self, the real self. If you are now completely uh, affected by the obsessions, completely annoyed by the obsession, completely fused by the obsession, then the self, in fact, is living in the now, but in the moment, not consciously, but now. I'm not using now in the mindfulness, living in the now. No, please try to understand this model with its specific definitions. Okay, so you can call it also the current self. If you are annoyed with the word now, then you can use the current moment self. Okay, so now in the current moment self, if you are completely fused with the obsession and you are completely busy grabbed uh, with the obsession, then your self, the S, is living in the OCD self. Okay, when you do the 4 steps or the 3 steps or the 2 steps or the single steps, in fact you are bringing your self from the OCD self up. Okay, the more you are up, the more you are approaching the real self. Of course, you will never be the real self. It is something different, because the nature of the real self is different from the nature of the self. But okay, we will not go so deep in this explanation. But I would like to say that in the beginning, maybe before birth or after birth, uh, you have only the real self. You didn't have any self or fake self. You had you had only the real self. And because of the environment, it can be the caregivers, the bad people or good people, uh, informations. It also because of the type of the attachment with the caregiver. Which attachment was this? Okay, this because of the interacting with the environment. Because of the interacting with the environment, I have said caregivers, sort of attachments, good and bad people, information. Because of these interactions, a self is developed, a self is created to protect or to function uh, practically at that moment with the environment, with the caregivers, with the bad people, with the good people, with the information. Uh, a, a self is developed, is created. This is the S, the self, that you are using now with all of its good attributes, with all of its bad memories, bad attachments, ambivalent attachments in this context. painful memories, okay, good memories. This is the self, which is a collection of all of your experience. Okay, so the self is developed later. First, there was the real self. Okay, OCD self, or the OS, I call it in this model. Okay, the OCD self is created by rituals. When you are doing the rituals, then the OCD self will be created. Of course, before the rituals, there was obsessions, there was OCD feelings, OCD thoughts, there was a lot of thoughts, obsessions, but still there was no real self. There was, uh, because of the obsessions and the ambivalence, as I have explained before, you fear and then you scan the environment, monitor the environment to check the fear, to check the danger. And the more you spend time in this, checking in the bad, the more you spend time on OCD rituals, on the rituals, the more the OCD self is developed. And then we have now three positions. So the less distance between the real self and the self, this can be happen when, as an example, when I am doing valued actions that it is in the direction of my values. Of course, the real self is the most uh, stable position in my existence. It is also where values lie. So values reside in the real self, and everything that is really me is in the real self. Okay. So the less distance between the real self and the self, when the self is approaching the real self, going up, okay, the more I become sure of my real self, of my values, who am I, the simpler I can answer this question. If someone asks me, who are you? Then the answer will be simpler because I am near my real self. So the less the distance between the self and the real self, the more I am sure about me, about my real self. That means the less doubt I have in my real self. And the less doubt, that means I have more capability to neglect the intrusions and the obsessions. Okay? Because also I will don't need to understand these obsessions. Okay, I don't need to understand them, and I don't want to understand them, and I don't have, because I know this is not me. Why? Because I am near my real self. So there is no doubt, or very much small doubt. So neglection or dismissing of the obsessions, the repugnant feelings and repugnant thoughts, will be very simple. And I will not develop an OCD. I will not develop an OCD self. Okay? And at the same time, when the distance between the self and the real self is bigger, then I will have more doubt about myself. Who am I? But we have said already, the more doubt that I will get, then the more I will need to understand the obsession. An obsession came to my head, then uh, at that time myself was with a was a there was a big distance between myself and the real self. So I will doubt. What are these thoughts? Are they me? These thoughts have something to do with me. Am I dangerous guy in harm OCD? Okay. So I will try to understand, because I am odd. There is no connection. There is very small connection between the self and the real self. So I will try to understand. I will try to know, to make sure. Okay. And the need for protection also. If these thoughts indicating that I am a dangerous guy. Okay. But the greater the distance between the self and the real self, the less conscious also the self of the real self. Okay. So the the greater the distance between the self and the real self, that means the connection is less, and the consciousness is also less. Okay. At the same time, my distance, the self distance with the OCD self will be smaller. So it is really a distance. So the bigger the distance between the self and the real self, the smaller is the distance between the self and the real self, because it is moving. So you have a fixed distance, okay, a fixed distance, and the more I am near my real self, the bigger this distance between the self and the OCD self, okay? So I will have the capability to neglect and to dismiss the obsessions, the OCD obsession. When myself, at that moment, when an OCD obsession attacks me, okay, when myself was near the OCD self, or a little bit far from the real self, okay. If it is far from the real self, then it will be definitely near the OCD self. Then I will be more prone to judge myself, to fear myself, to and also that means that I should do something. And because I am near the OCD self, or in the OCD self, or in this position in the OCD self, okay, then I have no distance. Uh, OCD self is a fake self. It is not like the real self. The more you come here, the more you approach the real self, the more consciousness, more capability of observation you have. Okay, this also can explain why some people say especially in the beginning of the therapy, oh, I cannot observe. You cannot observe because still yourself is not nearby the real self. The more you are nearby the real self, the more observation capability that you will have. Okay, and at the other hand, the more you are near the fake self, the less capable you can observe. Okay, because this self, the fake self, the OCD self, is an illusion, is a fake self. Okay, is a fake self. It is not a real self, so it cannot observe, while the real self can observe, can disassociate, okay, can make a distance to observe. This cannot, because it is a fake, it is a false self. So the more you approach it, the less you can be conscious of your obsessions, feelings, and thoughts. That means the less distance, that means the more you will be fused. You will fuse yourself with the OCD self. Okay. So OCD self cannot observe itself because it is fake. The real self can, and it is the most powerful thing that can observe what is beneath. Okay, because the higher can observe the lower very and more, uh, and it can have more insight because it is higher. Okay. Now, if you are in the OCD self, if you are living now in the OCD self, maybe for 1 hour, 6 hours, 2 hours per day, if you are living there in the OCD self, I mean, then everything you will see or experience, you hear or you think, will be imbued or colored or filtered by the OCD self. Okay, that means that everything you experience in the now will be seen through the filter of the past. Okay, or any new information, any new information will be interpreted, okay, by the already existing information. That means, in fact, you are not seeing something new. That means that the OCD self is strengthening itself, because you live now. So this is the self, this is the real self, this is the lower self, the fake selves, or going down to the OCD self in this context. Now you are in the OCD self. In the OCD self, everything you will see will be colored or imbued by the OCD self. Everything will be interpreted by the OCD self, by fear. You should do the compulsion. You should do the compulsion. Otherwise, you will not be yourself. You do the compulsion. I understand why this is how it is talking, the OCD self. The OCD self. I understand all these obsessions, all these repugnant thoughts, all these repugnant feelings. I warn you, it says, I warn you. If you don't do the compulsion, then you will be the feared self. Then you will be the feared self. Then you will be a criminal. You will be like that, a pedophile. You will be a disbeliever. You will be that and that and that. So you will see the new information, the world. You will hear, think the world with the OCD filter, OCD self filter. You will see the new information. You will interpret the new information by the already existing information, which is the information of the OCD self. So you will see nothing new. You will see the old OCD self. That means every experience, every thought will strengthen the OCD self, and you will stay in this dilemma, in this trap. Okay. So now the question is how we can get out of this dilemma. Okay. How can we get out of this dilemma? How is it possible to get out? We begin by observation, to know the truth, to to be to be able to observe. Okay, then there should be something uh, outside the fake self, should be outside the OCD self, should be outside the self, even the self. Okay, so that means you should be near the real self. This is why we say mindfulness will activate the contact with the real self, will bring you nearer, will bring you more near to the real self. Okay. Why? Because in mindfulness, in making distance, in mindfulness you will make a distance. Then you can observe without interpreting the new information with the old information. Then you will be more non-judgmental. Okay, so doing valued actions, valued behavior, okay, walking in the path of your goals, that means doing valued action. That means it enables you to go up. The more you are doing valued action, the more you are mindful of what you are doing, where I am now. Okay, uh, the more you are approaching up, the more you are approaching the real self, or the real self. Okay, the more you go up, you are approaching the real self, and the more you are scanning the environment, thinking about the obsessions, delving into the obsessions, rethinking the obsessions, overthinking the obsessions, monitoring the environment. Okay? Fearing that the more you are going down, the more you are approaching, you are living in the fake self, in the OCD self. That means you are living in fictitious world, imaginative world, a fake world. This is the OCD world. This is fake world. Okay? So it is very important to understand this model. So the more you are living in the OCD self, the more you will receive these deceptive brain messages, the more you will receive these painful, repugnant messages. Okay. Now tell me frankly, do you really believe that the self, that it is making so much pain, so much repugnant thought, do you think really that it is you? You cause such pain to yourself? It is not really you. It is not the real you. It is not the real self. It is something different. It is the fake self. This fake self try to attack you in your values, try to destroy your relationship with your real values through fear, through compulsions, okay, through taking you down, taking you uh, taking you away from your real self, taking you away from your real self. This is the fake self. This is the OCD self, the fake self. Any fake self, it will try to take you away, okay, to take you away from your real self. Of course, this is not my real self. This is not your real self. How is it possible? It causes you so much pain, distress, dysfunctional. You become dysfunctional, distressed, pain the whole day. Okay, maybe more than 6 hour, 4 hour per day pain. Okay, it disconnects you from your values, from your real self. So how it is possible that this is a real self in me? No, it is a fake self. This is a fake self. The truth is that OCD self can never and cannot do the compulsion by itself. This is why it needs you. It needs the self. It needs you to do the compulsion. The more you do the compulsion, you assist the fake self. The less you do the compulsion, you stop the compulsion, then you will kill the fake self. Okay? If you cannot kill the false self, then it will stay, but it will have no influence. Okay? You will not suffer because of this fake self. This is why you should understand what is the meaning of the compulsion in this new light, the light of the three selves model. So knowledge is very important to, after that, to practice the, how can you go up, how to approach the real self. Okay, to recognize this is me and this is not me. The obsessions are not me, but these are me. So you become yourself, your real self. Okay, I hope that I know that these videos asks for more attention from you, and you should a little bit contemplate on what I am talking. Please try to understand that and try to know that this knowledge is important. The knowledge of who am I, my real self, and the fake self. Okay? Take care and see you in the next video. Bye bye.